My name is Stephanie Morgan. I am 30 years old. And when I walked into that reunion, Aunt Patricia handed me a casserole. She had driven 40 minutes to make it. Chicken and rice in a foil-covered dish, still warm, pressed into my hands within 7 minutes of my arrival. She said, "I made this for you specifically, sweetheart. Your mom mentioned you've had a rough go of it. We're all pulling for you." She said it with the full warmth of a woman who had read a word in a GK chat and responded with love. I thanked her sincerely. I meant it. Then I carried the casserole to the picnic table, set it down next to a plate of someone's potato salad, and walked back to my car to get my laptop. What Patricia did not know, what 43 people gathered at Riverside Pavilion in Garner, North Carolina did not know, was that the woman they were pulling for earned $134,000 a year, had $67,000 in savings, and had been promoted 4 times in 4 years at a wealth management firm she had been building her career in since she was 23 years old. What they did not know was that every word they had been told about my difficult time, my struggle, my fragility, had come from a woman who had never once called to ask how I was actually doing. She had simply decided what the answer was and delivered it, reliably, for 4 years, in the specific vocabulary of concern that is impossible to argue with because it is performed as love. What they did not know was that I had a folder on that laptop that was going to change every conversation in that pavilion before the afternoon was over. This is that story. My mother is Linda Morgan. She is 57 years old, and she has worked as an office administrator at a dental practice in Raleigh, North Carolina for 19 years. She is organized and reliable, and she makes a very good green bean casserole at Thanksgiving. She hosts every other year. She sends Christmas cards with a family photo, always the same arrangement, always her in the center, always Sandra on her left. She manages the extended family group chat with the focused attention of a woman who has decided that managing information is the same as managing relationships. She is not malicious. I want to be clear about that because this story is not about a monster. It is about something much more ordinary and, in some ways, much more difficult to name. My sister Sandra is 32. She is a marketing manager at a regional hotel chain in Raleigh. She is engaged to a man named Brett who works in pharmaceutical sales. She lives 4 miles from my mother. She has dinner with my mother every Sunday. She appears in my mother's Facebook posts an average of 3 times a week. Restaurant photos, holiday decorations, the story of Brett's proposal told across 7 Instagram slides that my mother shared with the caption, "My heart is so full." Sandra is not cruel. She simply benefits from a family structure that centers her proximity to my mother, and she has never had a particular reason to examine what that proximity costs her sister. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina when I was 22 and took a job as a junior financial analyst at Hargrove Partners, a regional wealth management firm. I was not running from anything. I had interviewed for 3 positions in Charlotte, and Hargrove Partners offered the best path forward, and I took it. I found a 2-bedroom apartment in the South End neighborhood with clean walls and good light and a shelf I filled with books. I made friends slowly, the way I have always made friends. I learned the work the way I have always learned things, completely, methodically, by staying later than everyone else and understanding every number before I moved to the next one. By the time I was 25, I had been promoted to senior analyst. By the time I was 26, I was managing a client portfolio worth $4.2 million and earning $94,000 a year. I drove a 2020 Subaru Outback. I paid my bills. I lived a life that was entirely my own in a city 4 hours from my family, and I want to be precise about this, genuinely happy. My mother did not know any of this. Not because I had hidden it, but because she had never asked. The first time I understood what was happening was March 2022. I had just received my second promotion, Lead analyst, $94,000. And I called my mother to mention I was busy with a new client portfolio. She said, "I know you say that, Stephanie, but I worry. You've always been the one who takes on too much and then, well, you know how it goes. I just hope things are stable down there." She said it warmly. She said it with the gentle exhale of a woman performing concern in real time. I said thank you, and I hung up. 4 weeks later, my cousin Tyler sent me a text. He had been at Easter at my Aunt Donna's house. He had overheard my mother saying to Donna, "Stephanie is going through a hard time. She won't admit it, but I can tell. She's always been fragile. I don't push because it upsets her, but between us, I think she may have lost her position at that firm. She hasn't mentioned work in months." I had not mentioned work because she had not asked. I had been promoted 4 weeks earlier. I called my mother that same afternoon. I told her I had been promoted. She said, "Oh, I know. I just meant generally." The conversation ended there. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long moment after. I was not angry. I was something more clarifying than angry. I understood in that moment that correcting my mother in a private conversation would accomplish nothing at all. The narrative was not being built in phone calls between the two of us. It was being built at Easter tables and Christmas gatherings in rooms I was not in front of people who had no reason to question it because my mother delivered concerns so convincingly that doubt felt unkind. Correcting it would require a different kind of audience. But I was not ready yet. I filed the knowledge away and I went back to work. Christmas 2023. I was not at my mother's house because I was in Charlotte working through the holiday week on a major client presentation. A presentation that, when delivered in January, would contribute directly to my next promotion. A family friend named Grace asked about me. My mother said, "She couldn't make it. Things are difficult for her right now. We pray for her." She said it with a soft exhale and a slight downward tilt of the head. I know this because Tyler was there. Tyler is always there, and Tyler always texts me afterward. I read his message on Christmas Eve at 8:43 in the evening, sitting at my kitchen table in Charlotte with a cup of tea and the presentation open on my laptop. "We pray for her," I said aloud to my apartment. Then I went back to work. January 2024. The family group chat. 43 people, 3 generations of Morgans, one thread managed by my mother with the precision of a woman who reads every message twice before sending. A cousin named Marcus asked if I was coming to the summer reunion. My mother responded, "I hope so. She's been struggling. We all just want what's best for her." 41 people read that message. 41 people read the word "struggling" attached to my name in my mother's handwriting. I saw it at 7:14 in the morning while drinking coffee at my desk before a client call. I did not reply to the thread. I set my phone face down on the desk. Then I opened a new document on my laptop and started making a list. I want you to understand something about what came next. I did not build the folder out of anger. I have thought about this carefully since, and I am certain of it. What I felt in that moment was not the hot urgency of someone who wants to wound. What I felt was something quieter and more deliberate. It was the specific feeling of a woman who has been a supporting character in someone else's story for long enough and who has decided, calmly and finally, that it is time to offer the actual facts. The folder took me 3 evenings to compile. I did it after work, at my kitchen table, methodically. My last 3 pay stubs. My current employment contract from Hargrove Partners showing my title, Associate Director of Client Strategy, and my annual salary of $118,000, which would be adjusted to $134,000 in January following my performance review. 2 promotion letters on Hargrove Partners letterhead, each signed by the managing partner, each dated precisely. my LinkedIn profile with both promotions publicly listed, with endorsements from 6 colleagues. A screenshot of the email the managing partner had sent company-wide after my annual review in December 2023, the one that cited my 97% client retention rate by name. A photo of my apartment, the clean walls, the shelf of books, the small plant on the windowsill, the window with the afternoon light coming through it. And one document I wrote myself, 4 paragraphs, no adjectives. I titled it simply, "What is Actually True?" The document stated my job title, my salary history, $74,000 in 2020, $88,000 in 2021, $94,000 in 2022, $118,000 in 2023, $134,000 in 2024. My savings balance as of January 1st, $67,000. And then, in the final paragraph, the date of each of my mother's public statements about my difficult time. Easter 2022, Christmas 2023, January 2024. Listed in order, dated precisely. No commentary, no adjectives. Just the dates and the words she had used, laid next to the facts of my life like 2 columns of a financial report that do not agree. I told no one I was building it. I told no one I was coming to the reunion with it. I drove to Garner on a Saturday morning in June, alone in my 2020 Subaru Outback, paid in full in February 2022, with the laptop in a bag in the back seat. If you are still watching this, I want to pause for just a moment and say something to you directly. If you have ever opened a group chat and read a story about yourself that had nothing to do with the life you were actually living, if you have sat at a family table and felt the specific disorientation of being introduced to a version of yourself you don't recognize, you already understand why I built that folder. Leave a comment below and tell me your story. And if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. There is a new story every week. You will not want to miss what happens next. The Morgan family reunion is held every summer at Riverside Pavilion in Garner, North Carolina. It is a covered outdoor space with 6 long picnic tables, a gas grill, a cooler of soft drinks and beer, and a rope of string lights someone threads through the rafters every year in a tradition so old no one can remember who started it. This year, there were 43 people. The weather was warm and clear. Someone had brought a portable speaker playing country music at a volume that was festive without being intrusive. The grill smelled like burgers. It looked exactly like every Morgan family reunion I had attended since I was 7 years old. I arrived at 11:47 in the morning. I was wearing a clean linen shirt in a warm ivory and dark jeans. My hair was down. I had not dressed for an occasion. I had dressed to be entirely, recognizably myself. The woman I have been for 4 years in Charlotte. The woman who goes to client meetings and reads market reports and makes her own choices. Simply transposed to a picnic pavilion in Garner in June. Several relatives noticed something immediately. Not anything they could name, but a quality of presence that did not match the story they had been receiving. Aunt Donna, my mother's older sister, said, "You look wonderful," within 2 minutes of my arrival, and she said it with a particular emphasis, the kind that is not a compliment so much as a correction. Tyler found me in the first 10 minutes, handed me a drink, and gave me a look that contained an entire conversation. He was the only person there who knew what I had in the bag. He did not know what I was going to do with it. He just looked at me like someone who has been waiting 3 years for a particular moment to arrive. My mother greeted me warmly at the entrance to the pavilion. She hugged me. She said, "I'm so glad you came, sweetheart." She looked at me with the careful attentiveness of a woman checking a narrative against reality, assessing whether the story she has been telling and the daughter standing in front of her still agree. Something in her expression suggested a slight discrepancy she couldn't yet account for. Then she turned back to the group, and the reunion continued. Aunt Patricia found me at 11:54 and pressed the casserole into my hands. Chicken and rice, still faintly warm in its foil dish. She said what I already told you she said. I thanked her, and I meant it. She had driven 40 minutes and spent 2 hours of her Sunday making food for a woman she believed was struggling. That is not cruelty. That is love, applied to false information. And the casualty is not Patricia. The casserole is the truest image in this story. The collateral kindness of people who had no reason to question what they were told. I carried it to the table. I set it down. I walked back to my car and got my laptop. At 12:37 in the afternoon, I sat down at the main picnic table. Aunt Donna was already there, reading glasses on the chain around her neck. Tyler was there. 2 of my mother's cousins, Aunt Patricia, who had just served herself a plate of food and was settling in, 4 others whose names I will not list, but whose faces I can still see, the way they looked when they understood what was happening. Linda was at the grill with Sandra and Brett. I could see her from the table. She was laughing at something Brett had said. I set the laptop on the table and opened it. Tyler looked over. "What are you doing?" His voice was very quiet. I said, "I want to show everyone something." He went completely still. He understood before anyone else. I turned the laptop so the table could see it. My LinkedIn profile was on the screen. My name at the top, my title, Associate Director of Client Strategy, Hargrove Partners, directly below it. My promotion history running down the page, each position dated, each one endorsed by colleagues whose names anyone could look up. I said, calmly and without raising my voice, "I want to clear something up. Mom has been telling people I'm struggling. I want you all to see what's actually happening." Aunt Donna leaned forward in her chair. She put her reading glasses on. She read the screen for a long moment. She said nothing for 4 seconds. Then she said, "Associate Director." Not a question, a statement. The kind of statement that is also the beginning of an entirely different understanding of everything that came before it. I clicked to the next document. My most recent pay stub from Hargrove Partners, $134,000 annual salary, printed in the clean typeface of a payroll system that has no interest in anyone's narrative. The table went very quiet. Aunt Patricia set her fork down. She put her hand over her mouth. "Oh," she said. Just that single sound, then nothing else. Tyler was smiling so hard he had to look at the tablecloth. I clicked through each document steadily and without commentary. The first promotion letter dated March of 2021, the second dated November 2022. The managing partner's company-wide email from December 2023 citing my client retention rate of 97%, by name, in writing, for the entire firm to read. The photo of my apartment, the clean walls, the books, the plant on the windowsill, everything exactly as it is. And then I opened the last document, what is actually true. 4 paragraphs, no adjectives. I read it aloud. I will not say my voice was perfectly steady because I am human, and I have been carrying this for a long time. But it did not shake in any way that mattered. It was the voice of a woman who has looked at 2 columns of a financial report that do not agree and has chosen to read them both, plainly, in front of the people who deserve to have accurate information. I read my salary history, I read my savings balance, and then I read the date of each of my mother's public statements about my difficult time. Easter 2022, Christmas 2023, the group chat message from January 2024. I read the exact words she had used. Fragile, struggling, we pray for her. I read them without editorializing. I read them without looking up. I simply read them. And when I was finished, I closed the laptop and I said, "I thought you should know." Then I picked up a burger from the plate Tyler had pushed toward me and I took a bite. The silence lasted for 11 seconds. I counted them. 11 seconds of 43 people recalibrating. Then Aunt Donna started clapping. She began slowly. Deliberate, measured applause. The kind that is not celebration so much as verdict. The kind that means, I have watched a story being told in this family for a very long time, and I am choosing, in this specific moment, to name what I have seen. Tyler joined immediately, then two of the cousins, then Aunt Patricia, still with her hand pressed against her mouth and her eyes bright, began to clap with her whole body, the way people clap when something has corrected a wrong they didn't know they were carrying. Across the pavilion, my mother had turned from the grill. She saw the table. She saw the laptop closed in front of me. She saw Donna's hands moving, and she saw Tyler, and she saw the expressions on the faces of people she had been feeding a story to for 4 years. Something crossed her face that I do not have a clean word for. It was not anger. It was not shame yet. Shame would come later, in the quiet of her own kitchen. What I saw on her face in that moment was something more primary than either. The specific expression of a woman watching a story she has been telling dissolve, publicly and completely, in front of 43 witnesses. Sandra was standing beside her. Sandra had also turned. She looked at me, and then at Linda, and then back at me again. Then she took one small step away from our mother. One step. The smallest possible movement. It cost her nothing visible. It cost her everything internally. I saw it from across the pavilion. I did not point to it. I did not mention it. I did not need to. My mother walked toward the table. The table quieted. She stood at the end of the picnic bench and looked at me. "Stephanie, I looked up at her. "There's plenty of food, Mom. Come sit down." I gestured at the empty bench beside me. She sat. She did not speak for a long time. Around us, the reunion gradually recovered itself. The portable speaker, the cooler, the smell of the grill, the ordinary sounds of a summer afternoon. But the table remembered. The table would always remember. The plates of food in front of us went quietly cold, while 43 people inside that pavilion began, privately and carefully, to revise everything they thought they knew. In the week that followed, my mother called 4 times. I let the calls go to voicemail. Each message was shorter and more careful than the last, like a woman choosing her words with greater precision as she comes to understand that words are the very thing she is being held accountable for. On the 5th call, on a Wednesday evening 12 days after the reunion, I answered. The conversation was 31 minutes long. My mother cried. She said she had been worried about me. She said she did not realize how it sounded. She said, "I just meant generally again," and I let her say it, and then I waited until she had finished. Then I said, "I know, Mom." Then I said, "I need you to correct it, with everyone you told." She said she would. I said, "I'll know if you do." I was not threatening her. I was simply accurate. 3 days later, my mother sent a message to the family group chat. Donna helped her write the final version. I know this because Donna told me afterward, quietly, with a look on her face that I understood to mean, "I am sorry it took this long." The message acknowledged that my mother had been mistaken about my situation, that I was thriving, and that she was proud. It was the first time my mother had used the word thriving in connection with me in 4 years. I read the message at my desk, on a Tuesday morning, in my apartment in Charlotte, with my coffee and my work open beside me. I liked the message. Just the heart emoji, a small pink shape on a screen. I did not comment. I went back to work. Sandra called me the following week. It was the longest conversation we had had in 2 years. She did not apologize exactly. Sandra does not move in straight lines like that. But she said she had not understood, and I believed her because Sandra has always been closer to my mother's version of things than to the thing itself. Understanding requires distance. She is 4 miles away. That is a particular kind of limitation. I told her I was glad she called. I meant that too. My mother and I are in a different place now than we were. I do not think we will ever be uncomplicated. I think she will spend the rest of her life trying to understand why what she did felt like love to her and how it produced the result that it did. I have made peace with the fact that I may not be able to explain it to her in a way that lands. Some distances between people are not chasms so much as they are simply the particular geography of two women who process the world very differently and who love each other from either side of a gap that neither of them fully built alone. What I know now, at 30 years old, looking back at the 4 years that led to a picnic table in Garner and a casserole made with genuine love by a woman who had no reason to question what she was told, is this. The laptop was not a weapon. I did not build that folder to wound my mother. I built it because 43 people deserved accurate information about a woman they love, and I was the only one who could give it to them. There is a difference between revenge and correction. Revenge is about making someone feel what you felt. Correction is about restoring what is actually true. I have thought about this distinction a great deal since June, and I am confident that what I did that afternoon was the second thing and not the first. My mother spent 4 years telling people I was struggling. She was not wrong that I was, just not in the way she meant. The thing I was struggling with was being someone else's story. The laptop was the day I took it back. Have you ever had someone tell a story about your life that had nothing to do with the life you were actually living? And when the moment finally came, how did you set the record straight? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.